I keep hearing this term more and more, behavioral economics. What is that? And why is it important to us? You know me, I like to understand stuff like this, so let's find out together. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 14, Chapter 9.
Behavioral Economics.
Before we get to all that, you may notice that my voice is a little different. It's amazing that with all the vaccines churning through my body that I've picked up the one bug for which there is no shot. I probably sound worse than I actually feel, so on with the show. Behavioral economics. This is not a new way to study economics. In different forms, it has been around since the 1950s, but in these last few decades, and especially during the digital age, it's seen a resurgence. Professor Richard Thaler, University of Chicago, won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2017 for his work in this area. It is said that behavioral economics sits at the corner of economics and psychology. Behavioral economics is a method of economic analysis that applies psychological insights into human behavior to explain economic decision-making. Got it? I think so. And here is key point 1 into understanding behavioral economics. Traditional economics always studies how people should behave. Behavioral economics studies how they actually behave. Rational versus irrational or emotional. More on that in a few moments. Economics is not an exact science. We know this. You cannot change the laws of physics.
Scotty, I can't change the laws of physics.
Or chemistry or biology for that matter. But economics changes all the time because it's based on human behavior. Oftentimes unexpected human behavior. The world spins on the economy. One person's spending is another person's income, and we spend. That's what we do. We get a job, we get money, and then we spend. Housing, food, clothing, transportation. Constantly making choices on where to spend, how and how much. What financial institutions to base it from. What investments to make. What insurance to buy. Spend, spend, spend. They also tell us to save. Save for the future. Save for retirement. For a rainy day. Save. But what is saving? Saving is actually spending on a future plan that will help us have money to spend later in life. To quote the famous economist, Milton Berle, who once said, "I've got enough money to last me the rest of my life, as long as I don't have to buy anything. Try and go a day without spending. It's impossible." Spending, that's the economy. And that's why it's important to understand it in any way we can. How do we behave with our money, with our spending? Behavioral economics. The better we understand humans, the better we should understand spending and economic decisions, which should then lead to better and more stable economies. Well, that's the goal. We'll see. One of the problems is economists don't even agree on the future direction of economic study. The prevailing method used to be empirical. Think evidence-based. Hard data, empirical data, which in itself can address behavior. But more or less, it's hard evidence of past behavior, and then using it as an assumption that this will apply to the future. That can happen, we can learn from our past. Behavioral economics is based more on psychology. Again, the way people actually behave, and it is not always rational. So-called irrational behavior is obviously harder to predict. Traditional economists have always believed that a person's economic decision will always be in their own best interest. If that were true, if we always made the smartest decisions, well, we'd always have the small fruit cup for dessert instead of the chocolate cake with ice cream. Here is an important distinction on that. The world of data itself has exploded over the last few years thanks to the digital age. We have more data, more access to data, and better, faster ways to process it. Stacks and stacks of data sets. Now we even have companies that specialize in SQL. Some people call it SQL, but SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It's like a computer language that knows how to talk to databases to get the exact information you were looking for. That is how big databases are. They need their own language. You can no longer just go to the filing cabinet, second drawer, under L. Data, data, data. So there's that. And because of that, one would think that empirical economics would reign, based on tons of available data, the evidence. However, you know what else we have tons of data on? Human behavior. Big companies and governments track our behavior to the point where psychologists believe that even the so-called errors, the irrational decisions we make in life, are totally predictable. Remember, economics not an exact science, but it tries to analyze spending to determine economic decision-making. Even with empirical evidence, though, they are not an exact science, because we're humans, we're people. Nobody's quite sure how we're going to act, so let's study it. And this is why behavioral data is trending in economics right now. This affects our day-to-day because economic decisions are not only made by all of us all the time, but by large companies and big governments. The man considered to be the father of modern economics is Adam Smith, famous for his 1776 book, The Wealth of Nations. He's actually considered to have started out as a behavioral economist, touting the three basic principles of this method. 1, overconfidence. The confidence and conceit that most men have in their own ability. Remember, doing the rational thing, economists assuming that decisions will always be made in one's own best interest? Well, Smith says that's overconfidence and conceit, and doesn't happen that way. 2, loss aversion. Another big key. For most people, the pain of loss is greater than the pleasure of gain. More on that coming up. And 3, self-control. The pleasure that we may enjoy 10 years from now means so little to us compared to the pleasure we can experience right now. Let's get to the second key takeaway part of behavioral economics, loss aversion. Remember, the pain of loss is greater than any joy we will ever get from gain. How is it used in economics and business? Well, here's one small example. Streaming services. They offer free trials, 1 month free. The assumption here is not that you will have great joy for getting a free channel for a month, but that later when the trial is over, the loss you will face will feel so great that you will pay to keep the service. A grocery store chain recently tried to end the use of disposable plastic bags. It offered consumers a 5-cent premium for every plastic bag they would have saved by bringing a reusable bag. Nothing changed. Then the chain said, "We're charging you 5 cents for every plastic bag used." Plastic bag use went down almost immediately. It was the pain of the loss of 5 cents to which we have an aversion. That meant more to us than a gain of 5 cents. Carbon tax, one of the most misunderstood yet most effective tools we have in combating climate change. Its theory is based in behavioral economics. We pay extra for fossil fuels, so it's a loss. The aversion to losing money will theoretically make us use less fossil fuels. Fighting climate change, cutting back on fossil fuels, is the right thing to do. Here's another thing. People want to do the right thing, but they have a problem when it comes to turning those thoughts into action. Carbon tax is a hated tax, so they offer rebates. People still hate it. You know why? The pain of loss is way more than any gain. There's an example they often use of one person finding $50. He's thrilled, of course. Another person finds $100, but loses $50. At the end of the day, both people are up, net $50. The first person is somewhat overjoyed at the gain, but the second person is absolutely miserable about the loss. One last quick point on this, because I love this story. They did a study for many years of Olympic medal winners, and they found that generally the bronze medal winner was happier than the silver medalist. The silver guy was frustrated, came so close to the gold, was almost a champion. Instead, second place. I'm a loser. I hate losing. Whereas bronze medal winners tend to focus on almost finishing fourth out of the medals altogether. But they found this little extra something to finish third and get a bronze medal. They're thrilled at their gain, but not as much as the silver medalist is feeling the loss. Here's another interesting experiment on how people make economic decisions. It's called the ultimatum game. The first person gets $20. They can split it with a second person any way they want. 50-50, 70-30. You can keep $19 and give away $1. But they decide on the split and they make the offer. If the second person accepts the offer, they both get the money as per the split, even if it's just 19 and 1. But if the second person rejects the offer, they both get nothing. And they both know all of this going in. The ultimatum game. Logically, it would seem that the second person should always accept the offer, because at least they will end up with something, and something is better than nothing. But people don't make economic decisions based only on money and on logic. They could base their decision on an idea of fairness, trust, even revenge or anger. You just offered me $1? Screw you, how about we both get nothing, huh? I reject it. I may be out $1, but I just punished you because you're out 19. By the way, the results of this psychological test show that most proposers offer between 40 to 50% of the amount, and therefore the offer is accepted most of the time. Interesting sidebar, most of the research studies at a university level involve these smaller amounts of money. I mean, how much money does a university have to spend on another economic study? So people wondered, would the results be the same if there were higher dollar amounts involved, more at stake? Well, no one could afford a study that involved tens and tens of thousands of dollars. But along came a UK game show, Golden Balls. Starts with several contestants. They all have golden balls about the size of a billiard ball, and there's different money amounts hidden inside them. A game is played and contestants are voted off the show. But here's the key. At the end of the game, it's down to 2 players and a final dollar amount that has been determined by the gameplay. Let's say it's £40,000. It's the UK. This is the last part of the game. Both contestants are given a split or steal option.
You both have a golden ball with the word split written inside. You both have a golden ball with the word steal written inside.
And they're sitting at a table across from each other. They can talk to each other. This is all played out in the open.
So I am more than happy to split with you if I can trust you to do the same with me. I guaranteed you, I can shake on it now, I guaranteed you at the beginning of the game, if you took me through that round I would split, and I still intend to split with you.
Only the final split or steal decision is made in secrecy, and then later revealed together. If they both choose split, they will split the 40K evenly. If one person chooses split and the other steal, the person who chose steal gets all of the cash, the other nothing. But if they both choose steal,
If you're both greedy and you both steal, you both go home with a big fat 0.
make your decision. Needless to say, psychologists studied this show a lot. And guess what? Most people chose split, loss aversion. Golden Balls was never remade for a North American audience. But Deal or No Deal, remember that? That show seemed like a behavioral economics research project, only hosted by Howie Mandel.
It's just been an amazing, amazing journey today, and I'm going to take the deal.
Behavioral economics. Have you ever heard of the framing effect? If not the term, you've certainly been subject to it. Framing effect. How is the offer framed? Would you rather buy something for $20 or $19.95? Would you rather buy a steak that is 20% fat or 80% fat-free? It's all in the way it's framed, and it's how we consume products and services, including news and information. There's also something called nudge theory. The Nobel economist Professor Thaler that I mentioned, he wrote a book called Nudge, and it implies that extra little push for you to at least check out an item. Could be a special display, like end of the aisle at the grocery store, or a large sign that says sale 50% off. Nudge is anything that will make you stop at least for a second and deal directly with the situation in front of you. You're being nudged. Yes, I want that. No, I don't. Maybe I do. Well, you're being nudged. If these all sound like tricks to make us spend our money that perhaps we didn't intend to spend that day, well, you're right. It's a trick. But it has long been known that it is much easier to make money exploiting human mistakes than to try and correct them. As humans, we think or we feel. It's almost impossible to do both at the same time. As far as our economic decisions, almost all of the marketing today appeals to how we should feel. Imagine yourself in this car or this tropical paradise. Look how happy these people are after they bought this product. Have the ice cream and cake. You deserve it. Emotional decisions, not smart economic ones. And sometimes they're mistakes, exploited. They don't care about you, they care about your money. A fool and his money are soon parted. You think that still doesn't apply? Traditional economists not only believed people make the smartest, most efficient, and beneficial decision for themselves, but that the experience of spending improves with time, will teach us how to spend. Behaviorists disagree. I mean, let's say you buy a coffee every day, but how often do you buy a brand new suit or a brand new car or a house? Experience in spending on a cup of coffee gives you almost zero insights into buying a home. Speaking of exploiting mistakes instead of trying to fix them, I like what ad exec Rory Sutherland said in a recent talk. Corporations and governments want you to believe they are fixing things, but they fix things with stuff. They spend a lot of time letting you know what's wrong with the world and how they are going to fix it with stuff, engineering, technology, gadgets, in government cases, compulsion, laws and legislation. Well, what about persuasion? I mean, I know we need rules and laws, but how about psychological persuasion? Especially if we have more and more understanding of behaviors. Here's an example. Childhood obesity rates. Governments want a sugar tax, a ban on fast foods near schools, or age restrictions. Well, one school board saw unhealthy food consumption go down immediately because they put healthy options at eye level in the school cafeteria. That's it. The visual persuasion led to a change in behavior. And with the digital age, organizations have the ability to intervene at the point of your decision-making. It may sound a little Big Brother-ish, a breach of your privacy, and it is. But in a way, it's already being used, right? Google an item that you're looking to buy, a camera, and just watch the number of ads for cameras and special offers that you start to see pop up. That is them trying to intervene at a key point in your decision process. I mentioned earlier the framing effect, how something is framed to influence your decision. With digital, the framing is more instant and more directly targeted at you because they know you. They've been tracking your behavior. So let's recap. Traditional economics is based on empirical data and the premise that people will make the smartest, most efficient decisions on their spending, from a cup of coffee to a new house. Behavioral economics, people will often make irrational decisions. They have a loss aversion and often buy things due to a lack of self-control. Behavioral seems to me like a more practical way to study economics. So hopefully now you know behavioral economics. If we want a better economy, we just alter our behavior. It can't be that simple. Or can it?
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.